Now live. Hi everybody, and good morning, good day, and good afternoon for some of you still in Tidy. We have now the third panel. We had, one first panel in New Zealand. Then we were, with the chief scientist previously, and now we have, the essence of the seaweed industry from Australia. So on the panel today, we have Zhang, my friend Wei, my friend Pierre, and my friend Catriona, and they represent, the spirit of the seaweed industry, because they were the ones starting, to grow seaweed, starting to think seaweed, starting, to modeling the seaweed industry. And I'm very fortunate because I know them for quite a long time. I've seen and witnessed the development of the seaweed industry in Australia. And it's very important to explain to our audience that if today we have the MBCRC program up and running, it's because of them. So I'd like, to immediately jump into the discussion. And even if I'm not used to do that, I'd like you in 1 minute maybe to explain who you are. And we're going to start with Wei. Wei, can you explain what is your connection with the seaweed industry and how did you get into so much effort, to bring, the MBCRC program to life? Sorry.
Thank you, Pierre, and for your introduction there. And my name is Wei Zhang, representing the Australian Marine Bioproducts Cooperative Research Center. I'm the current research director. And so Pierre, so my journey, with the seaweed can go back to more or less 20 years ago when I started to move from terrestrial, marine terrestrial biotechnology research into marine space, where I realized the huge resources of the seaweed diversity, particularly because they have been growing in huge quantity. So my research is more, on how we can process the seaweed to produce the high value product back into that time, particularly looking for what we call this more biorefinery process, which we can utilize all the seaweed resources and with possibly zero waste and with clean technology. So that's where I get to. So over the last 27 years, and the seaweed is one of my favorite marine organisms I've been working with, and also have done a lot of work and to develop a range of different products working with different industry partners.
Cool. Catriona, where are you based, Catriona? You're in one of the most splendid places, in Australia, correct?
Oh, I am. Thank you, Pierre. Yeah, it's a bit chilly today, although the sun's out. Well, I'm coming from Hobart, right down the very bottom of Australia. As you can tell by my accent, though, I'm not from Hobart originally. I'm Scottish, so loving the opportunity to talk to colleagues in the Northern Hemisphere. My background is a little different. I'm sort of into seaweed as a sideline. I've been very involved in aquaculture, and particularly in environmental interactions and sustainability of aquaculture. And through connections with Pia, Wei, and the other Catriona Hurd, also based in Tassie, we're C1, C2, got involved with seaweed and the potential of seaweed as not just as a product, but as a way to actually manage environmental conditions around systems as a whole. And so I've come in with a bit of background in the governance and the sustainability side. But I'm very involved with Wei in the MBCRC and met Pia many times through that and various other ways. We're a very connected community down here in Australia. So that's my background.
Thank you, Kat. Pierre, I guess that everybody will know you around the world. You're known as the seaweed mermaid, but can you tell us more? We've seen your deck in the previous video. Tell us more about you.
Yeah, sure. So my background from Sweden originally at the Department of Systems Ecology at Stockholm was all about sustainability. I got the opportunity to look at how tiger prawn farms in Southeast Asia and Sri Lanka specifically could be better managed using ecological systems. And those, of course, included fish and mussels and things cleaning up wastewater streams, but importantly, seaweed. And to me, seaweed became the key to the sustainability and really what wasn't known then as a circular economy, but capturing nutrients, putting back carbon dioxide, oxygen. It just made logical sense to look at seaweed. But after 10 years of saying, well, seaweed's there to clean things up, no one was paying for that. So then you realize, well, seaweed's got a lot of value in its own right. It is the biggest biomass of aquaculture in the world today, and Australia is not doing anything with it, which is, well, not much with it. And girt by sea, that's pretty ironic. So it's an opportunity we've missed. And then I've spent a lot of time looking at nutrition, health, the molecules in seaweed, doing clinical studies with nutritionists and medical researchers. And now I'm thinking that, well, I can't keep talking about it in the university. I've stepped outside. I'm now a seaweed farmer, and it keeps me busy, but it feels really meaningful and purposeful to turn it into action, if you like. So that's what I do now.
So, and let me continue with you, Pierre. So do you have, the feeling that the current state of development of the seaweed industry in Australia is not yet, what you expected?
Well, it takes time, and we sort of set up a strategy and opportunity for seaweed with a network of people in Australia, like over 10 years ago. We're down in Hobart in Tasmania, where there are some companies using seaweed for bioactive ingredients, but and a couple of people were harvesting for some local seaweed, supplementation, but it really wasn't well appreciated or understood. And now in the last 10, 15 years, it is understood. And now all of a sudden in the last couple of years, it's gone crazy. But in terms of an actual industry and growing it, it's still very few key players doing it. There's a lot of people who would like to do it. And there's a strong research base, which is great, because eventually these things will join up and more people will be doing it. The small scale wild harvest is sort of still happening. It could happen a little bit more, but we're not as abundant in our biomass as say Nova Scotia or the coast of Ireland. So we're not going to reach higher harvest rates. We need to look at cultivation, and there's not many of those systems and technologies well developed or established yet. And we need to translate the knowledge of cultivation, nurseries, seaweed, and production and processing to others. And there's just less than a handful of us actually doing that today. So it's going to still take a while.
Okay. So today, we want to try to understand how we can transform this amazing research that you have in Australia into a sustainable and profitable business. And so I'm turning, this question to you. When you started thinking about, the future MBCRC program, what did you have in mind, and how you develop, this concept and this idea that is, now coming to life?
Yeah, thank you, Pierre. I guess I should start introducing what MBCRC is about. The MBCRC is short form of Marine Bioproducts Cooperative Research Center. And this is called MBCRC. The CRC program is Australia federal government sort of funding program to be there for over some 30 years now. So their primary goal is try to supporting the industry-driven research, of course, by building the industry, government, and research organization sort of partnership. And so the MBCRC is just one of such projects being supported. So on the yearly basis, possibly supporting 3 to 5 such, sort of cooperative research center, and typically with the funding size $30 million, maybe up to $100 million, depends, the field. So in our case, so we've been successfully funded, by 2021. So officially started our sort of establishment by 1st of July, 2021. However, this is about 10 years of effort to build the business case, of course, eventually get the support. So you ask us for what our early vision there is, as just alerted in the chief scientist section. Australia indeed is the world's third largest ocean territories here, and we have a very unique and also sort of a biodiversity in our ocean, particularly talk about endemic species, to use seaweed as example. And we have very high endemic species, about 60–80%, I would say. And also in terms of the brown and red seaweed species, we accounted possibly named the seaweed species about 15%. So from that perspective, you can see everyone getting in the field will be driven by the amazing potential of the seaweed. So that's just one example. So similarly with all the marine biodiversity bioresources, so I was, basically, driven by the dream of how we can turn this into something, the future of Australian ocean whales. So that's basically where we started. So in last year was NBCR's mission by establishing this is first ever of Australian national research program to drive the marine bioproduct industry growth, of course, including significantly the seaweed industry growth. So our mission is really to deliver the innovations to drive what we call the third generation high-value marine bioproduct development, industry development. That's in relation to the first generation fisheries, second generation of aquaculture, applying to seaweed cases, wild harvesting, or you're actually doing farming of the seaweed and moving to the value-added processing and high-value products. So that's sort of our vision there. Of course, we would like to link globally and also to be globally competitive. So that's what it's serious about, yeah.
We will come back to this point. Catriona, we all know that seaweed is becoming a very, very hot topic. And as a scientist and looking at what should be done next, what are the advantages and, of course, the issues linked to this hyper communication, and what should be done?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Pierre. The seaweed is getting a lot of airplay at the moment. And in Australia, that's been great because it's raised the profile around it and potentially certainly increased some investment opportunities for seaweed. But there are some downsides to that. And I'm pretty sure everyone who's listening to this, who's been involved in seaweed, knows that with the hype in the last few years, there's a lot of people out there that think growing seaweed is really easy now. And for anyone who's actually involved in the industry, they'll know really well that's not the case. So that to me has been a bit of a negative in that so many people getting on board with the lack of experience and understanding. Similarly, in terms of the environmental sustainability issues that come out around the hype that we've got at the moment, particularly in Australia right now, aquaculture as a whole has had a bit of a bad rap around its sustainability, and it's really concerning in some ways that might also be a taint onto seaweed, and yeah, some of the hype around seaweed is not helping with that. We've had incredible claims put in around, the amazing nutritional and health benefits, even to the potential for seaweed to single-handedly address and redress all the impacts of climate change. Yeah, seaweed's an amazing plant, an amazing product, but the ability to do all of those things, some of it's just not possible. So I think for science, one of the things we have to do is to validate and ground truth some of those claims and counterclaims, put some science behind the real and what I believe is pretty impressive benefits of seaweeds that we have right now. And the worry would be that if we don't achieve the expectations that the hype puts for us, then they'll pass by the opportunity. So making sure that with the scientists are in there doing that validation and ground truthing. The other one that's possibly a bit more specific to Australia is there's really a lot to do in this space. And one of the things we have at the moment is a fairly restricted science base. We've got a lot of really good scientists, but not enough to do everything that needs to be done at the speed that it needs to be done. So we need to bring up the skilled workforce. And I think, what Wei was talking about, the NBCRC is a really good vehicle for this. And it's a really clear focus for us that we actually, if we want to grow the seaweed industry, we've got to grow the products, the production, but we've got to be able to provide the workforce to the community to do that. But back to your question specifically, Pierre, what does the hype mean for research? I think basically where the hype is ill-informed, it can lead to misplaced or misdirected research. And that's poor use of resources, and we don't have enough resources to have them sidetracked. But it has, on the upside, generated an awful lot of interest, funding, and support. And so that is really seeing us actually able to focus on some of the research that needs to be done. As an optimist, I think if we are able to show the opportunity and the value in seaweed, we can keep it on the right track. But we've got to pull together to do that.
Yeah, well, thank you. And there will be many questions, about, what you said, but let me go back, to Pierre, because you're an entrepreneur and you've been experiencing, everything from the initial research to now the development. And I'd like, to better understand what could be the burden that we should remove in order, to foster, the development of this industry, Pierre, and not just, the local and the state, but, at the global level, what is missing in terms of regulation or easing, a process, to accelerate and to foster the development of the industry from research to development?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a catch-22. We don't have a lot of knowledge in the Western world, at least, on what seaweed farming is. It's a bit like saying you grow plants. Well, do you grow grapes or do you grow wheat? They're quite different. They're different species, different systems, different requirements, and it's the same for seaweeds as well. So many people are talking about, I want to be a seaweed farmer, and the governments are saying, oh, some of them in Australia are buying the story that, oh yeah, this is the next big thing and an economic opportunity for us. So then it becomes political. And then they're rushing through, I would argue, lease approvals when there's proponents that don't know what species there are, how they're going to grow them, what markets they're going to grow them for, let alone the local environmental impacts that they can have. And we need to be smart enough in society to have learnt lessons from aquaculture in the late 1900s, because it had such poor social license to operate after all of the big mistakes it made. There were hundreds of millions of dollars invested into the industry. It was going to promise employment opportunities, but the ecology of the system wasn't considered at all. And it really devastated whole countries' economies because they got the recipe wrong on how to do it. So we can't just jump in gung-ho going, yeah, seaweed's great. It is great. It doesn't suck up nutrients. It did put the oxygen into the planet's atmosphere. It is fantastic, but you have to understand the ecosystem in which it works and how it does that, and where you do it and how you do it, and even become efficient. I mean, I think maybe some people saw the video we were showing before on our farm. We actually capture concentrated wasted nutrient streams and clean up areas. So that can become even an ecological service, especially with the nitrogen loaded coastal zones around the world. So there is serious opportunity to facilitate, encourage, and allow proponents of seaweed farming and how that fits into society, the coastal industries that exist in the local environments, to those proposals as well. But at the same time, we can't just say, yes, here's 200 hectares of ocean, put a seaweed farm there. I mean, there's some places like that have been where there's not even any nutrients for the seaweed to grow, and people don't understand that. They say things like seaweed doesn't need fertilizers to grow. Well, maybe you're not using a synthetic fertilizer, but it does need nutrients, and if you're not putting it in a place with nutrients, it's not going to grow. We do need nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium like any other plant. So there's these really big missing gaps between proponents who think, as Catriona said, it's easy. And I mean, I must be either really slow or dumb, because I've been doing it for a long time, many different species, and I can control what we do, but it took a long time to get there. And there's many species I would love to be looking at, but I know just how hard the reproductive cycles are to control and understand. So it is not easy. And when proponents come in pretending that it is, and governments are jumping on and facilitating that, already we're seeing in Australia a number of conflicts with other ocean, marine estate users saying, there's 100 hectares of seaweed farm gone up next to me. What does that mean? And they don't understand it. The impacts aren't well understood. We've got to do this we don't have to hold back the reins, but we have to do it smart. And that doesn't always mean going from 0 to humongous when you haven't even really understood the system. And so I think you need very constructive governments. And I found that there's quite a diversity of regulatory systems in Australia. Some states are just jumping in gung-ho and saying, this will buy us votes, this will create an economy. And then there's others that are being quite restrictive, going, we don't know what you're talking about. That's the too hard basket. You just do the business as usual stuff. And it's neither of those. It's something in between, where you have a very close relationship between the scientists and entrepreneurs talking with the scientists at the government, EPA, environmental protection level, as well as the regulatory authorities. And we need to be teaching each other. So I have a very close relationship and constructive relationship with our New South Wales government. Since 10 years ago, I've been showing them what we do. I've been giving them data on how water is cleaned up. We're showing how it can benefit the nutrient loads in a coastal catchment. And it takes time. We can't be impatient about that, but a good industry will take the time it needs to get it right, instead of burning and crashing in a huge failure. And we saw things like that in the algal biofuels industry probably a decade ago, where you can grow algae for markets, but the big hype promises left a lot of mom and pa investors shortchanged, a lot of opportunity and time to real sustainable long industries missed. And we just don't want to see that happen in the seaweed world again. So we need investment for governments to have time to support and work with the proponents and get the story right.
Thank you, Pia. And talking about the critical risk, because we're going into unknown territories, with the development of seaweed, and we have to be careful. And we can have many sessions where everybody will come back, to same ground and say, we don't know what's going to happen if we grow massive quantities of seaweed. So you've been supporting through your lab many spin-off, and so what could we better assume, in terms of critical risk to build, this seaweed industry way? How do you envisage that, from the lab to the real business? What do we need, to do, and in what process, should we jump immediately to the large scale? What can we assess before? So how can we organize, the process of spinning off, the technology that comes from the lab to the industry?
Yeah, Pia, as just Pia talk about her own story there. I guess what is most important is in terms of translation of research from laboratory into industry. I guess very often the researchers understand quite poorly. So what actually the commercialization pathway, also those type of risks associated. So from that perspective, I've been more talking from research translation, how we can assume or better manage the critical risk. I guess really it's dependent on the use and also market of the seaweed and seaweeds, derived products. And the biggest risk is actually, as Pia said, we need to understand so the regulatory requirement in terms both of the fiber production processing and also the final product to different market sectors. So without understanding that, so whatever you grow, whatever you research on, may not end up with contribution to the seaweed industry. So that's would be, I think, one of the biggest I would think in there. To better manage that, again, you have to look in from the end side of your development and the banking to see how that can drive your research and research translation. And that is a difficult task. However, I guess there are mechanisms we can do this, as you can see the NBCRC. So our sort of philosophy is really driven by the market, driven by the industry. So therefore, the research is not really have this free way to go. And we have lots of constraints from that end user side of the story, and also from the regulatory area. So therefore, they can help us to shape the research program in a better way, particularly to manage those critical risks there. I guess, later I would like for this question, Pia can talk about her own experience, but I guess it didn't mention, for example, when you develop a service for food and the food safety is a critical risk. If you cannot meet those, no matter how much you grow, how you grow, and how you process, you will end up with no product can be sold in the market. So that is basically one. Another one, I would say, also speed to the market. So the research side of the story, so sometimes can be slow, but the market needs the speed, to the market. So again, to be able to identify the clear demand from end user side of it, so we can actually have even more focus on our R&D and also on the translational, aspect of scale up, for example, and the commercialization. So that's, I think, is the second, the biggest risk I would say is how we can address the speed of the market and how would the research and also the industry can link it together to align so their sort of speed, to the market success or to the market end of demand. The third one, I think the critical risk here would be nickel-skilled workforces. As we know, the seaweed industry now become a global, sort of thing. So everybody's rushing into this, although they've been there for many, many years. But now everybody thinks it's new. To some degree, of course, it's still new because many new species can grow, but we don't have the skilled workforces. I would say that is also another big risk. While you can develop your research, fantastic, but if you don't have those skilled workforces to translate them to the commercial sort of success, that's again, it is very, very bad. So I think, if we summarize, so what we can do or how we can better, manage those critical risks for the seaweed industry growth, I think we do need scientific evidence informed policy development and product safety standard, and also regulatory framework development, and the consumers, consumers understand consumer side of the drivers, and is a key, for us to manage better of the risk by engaging the stakeholders across the supply and the value chain. So yeah, so that's possibly from me. I think
this is very interesting way, and I see the comments on the chat and some of and thank you, Theo, for making the point about the customer needs, and it's really something that we miss all the time. We need to be in connection with what will be the market demands also. It's very important. But one of the points I'd like to come back to the third point with Catriona, we were talking about the lack of staff and researchers to develop this potential seaweed industry. So how do you anticipate this, and can we work on optimizing the training of future researchers to support the future need of the industry, because they need more researcher, even if it's business, because it's applied business, and seaweed is very much research to the market. So there's a strong research component. So how can we work on that?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Pierre, and I think Wei's picked up on that too. It is one of the issues we have in Australia. So the industry there are some established players. We think about it being an aspiring industry, and there's some great opportunity and potential in there, but there's some long-term players who've been in the game for quite some time. Pierre's an excellent example of that. And they have a good understanding of what it needs to grow the industry. I'd be very wary of growing an industry on the researchers' objectives. It needs the industry to drive what is the expectations. But in doing that, it shows the industry plans show quite clearly where the gaps are, and so does the research community. And I'll really be, within Australia, we have some great seaweed researchers. There's just not very many of them, and many of them are actually coming from a very different application. They're not applied agriculture researchers. They're seaweed ecologists, seaweed ecophysiologists, even conservation ecologists. And they're applying their skills to this. So we need to have a formal way to upskill researchers, but also skilled and science-based industry players. So I'm very cautious in this of suggesting that the research is embedded in academia or government even. It needs to be across all of them. And as a result, I think we need the support mechanisms across all of those in developing the workforce. It has to be embedded in industry, embedded in research, and embedded in government and governance to really do that. And I think one of the things back to the hype but the hype has partially helped secure investment, not just private investment, but investment from government. Maybe it's unfair to call it hype, because an awful lot of what we are hearing is actually the real story coming forward. Some of it is hype, but a lot of it is the potential, actually seeing the potential in what seaweed can offer Australia. And with that comes some investment. So there's a blue economy CRC down here has a significant investment. There's the marine bioproducts CRC, and it's absolutely squarely in this space. But there's a whole range of other investment opportunities and government agencies looking at that. And I'm really encouraged at the moment, because the conversation is being had collectively amongst all of those at the moment. And that's really important. One, that we don't duplicate effort, and two, that we target the effort into the right place. And as I said earlier, I am a researcher, I am in academia, but if I was to decide where the needs are, I'm pretty sure it might not absolutely align with where industry feels it needs to be. So having those conversations helps us prioritize it. One of the things that's on the cards and is being muted, Joe Kelly couldn't make it today, but with the Australian Sustainable Seaweed Alliance is trying to get some government support for a hatchery network. It's really clear to us that, as Pia alluded, the broodstock development and that nailing the reproductive cycle and capacity of new species is really critical. And it's something that a lot of startup industries really were struggling with. So to get the money into that, either into the companies themselves to do it, or into some kind of hatchery network that can sustain that, that could then become the workforce generation of the future, those capabilities. So I think that's quite a neat initiative that's being muted over here, and I'd really support that. And I think it's, MBCRC is aligned with it, as is many of the other funding agencies. If we can get that up and happening, and I think this is one area we are also looking to support from our international colleagues. We should be talking amongst each other about what that workforce skills are, because it's not just a localized one anymore, it's an international opportunity. And the last thing I just want to mention in that is, one of my big concerns is when you have a shortage of skilled people, sometimes there might be the tendency to lock them down. So grab the couple of people that do it and do it well and lock them into something so they can't work with the rest. And that, might solve the short-term issues for that one sector or that one company, but it doesn't serve the national agenda or the industry as a whole very well. And I think we have to be quite careful about that.
We just have 7 minutes left before we dive into the cooking recipe. So quickly, Pia, I think that one very important point we mentioned during our conversation is, the links between the different communities. So communities. So how do you see and how do you reconcile this vision with communities, SMEs, and large corporations? How we can work and make it work, for everybody?
Yeah, I think what we've sort of been discussing now in this session, and just thinking about the synthesis of it now, is that the exciting new frontier of something means that we've got people who really believe and are zealous, and then you've got people who are skeptical, and then there's not really a consensus of that. Yes, this is a serious contender, a serious industry for Australia, and it can be large and have a big impact both on our sustainability and new jobs. But so we need to bring this together somehow, and consolidate the agreement that this is a strategy for Australia to invest in. And the media is going to be, we didn't really talk about the media, but the media is going to have to play a part in this, because they're always, I think media is great generally, but they're always looking for a great story. And it's easy just to catch on to this next great big blue sky solution and promote it that way. And then investment happens in that way and investors get hurt. We just need a little bit more of a tamed story to bring everybody forward, especially when we're working with the opportunity for Indigenous people. I mean, I just take Chile as an example with the salmon industry. They were promised the sky is the limit for them. They can be like Norway with as much salmon in the world. And then they didn't get the ecology right. And then it crashed down on them. And we can't, in a country like Chile, it was a huge percentage of the economy and population that crashed. And we can't afford to do that, especially with the recovery that we need to have with opportunity for Indigenous Australians, our First Nations people in many countries are looking at seaweed. Many developing countries have great opportunity. African nations, Southeast Asian countries have already gone there to develop economic opportunity for their local people. So we in Australia as well need to recognise that we can't overblow these promises. We need to work closely with Indigenous people. We need to partner. Partnerships, I think, are something that's critical. I think many people propose seaweed industry and they're just going off on their own, like they do it in isolation. You don't. Like our company, people ask me, how many people do I employ? Well, I don't employ that many in the company, but I have so many tradespeople in our local area that support us. And in that way, going back to the skilled staff, is that most of the people I need now are electricians, plumbers, engineers, that sort of thing. So we need those industries, not just to train people up in seaweed, we need to pivot those industries so they understand what they're working with. So the pump guys know how to handle salt water in the pumps. That kind of thing is the re-education we need in people that are already skilled up. And at the same end, at the food market side, we've got large companies that 10 years ago just scratched their heads when I came to them with a bag of seaweed. Now they're calling me and I'm having to work with them and educate them on which seaweeds you can put in foods, how we might address flavor challenges and those sorts of things. So I think it's a bit about pivoting and re-educating the people all around us. And importantly, I'd love to see mechanisms that work with it. We can bring Indigenous First Nations opportunities in with us, because we can't do our seaweed industry and then First Nations opportunities do their industry. That's how the systems seem to be set up, because you've got to have First Nations opportunities over there. Let's merge them. We need a partnership to make this work, because if we are on this continent together, we need to be working together. We need to create that First Nations opportunity, but in partnership with us. And that hasn't really happened. So that's the sort of future I'd love to see for Australia.
Thank you, Pierre, and that will be your wish list, as a final question. So I'm going to turn it, to Wei and Catriona. 1 minute left. So what will be your message, to the people that will be listening to the sessions that are coming in the next 24 hours, and what will be the one at the top priority on your wish list? Catriona, 1 minute. You're on mute. You're on mute, Catriona. 45 seconds.
I'll do it. My big one is reiterating what Pia says. We need to work together. The sort of thing you're doing right here, we need to listen to each other. There you go. Done.
Thank you, Kat. And Wei, top of your wish list?
Yeah, so I guess all the seaweed industry is great, so I'm promising. But I guess we here, the key message is really we need to make sure. So we assess all the risks associated with the industry growth, ensuring that we're investing in the right direction. From Australia perspective, I think we, as we said, can make a great contribution to the global seaweed industry, because of vast ocean territory, unique seaweed biodiversity, and also hence the product diversity. But I think from MBCRC perspective, also Australia perspective, we will come to collaboration and a partnership with the like-minded sort of stakeholders around the world, and collectively we have to think of the seaweeds actually can make a big contribution to the sustainability of our both earth and ocean. So that's my message.
Thank you very much, Pierre. I'd just like to remind everybody that you can connect with Pierre, Catriona, Wei, and all the speakers during the day. You have to go online in the lounge area. And don't hesitate, to reach out to them if you have a project, if you want, to be the next generation of electrician that Pierre is looking for, contact her. She is very willing, to engage with you. And not to mention that there is, our Seaweed First nonprofit raising money today, and Pierre is part of the project that we want to support. So don't hesitate, you can donate now. Thank you very much, my friends, for this interesting, inspiring session. And I look forward, continuing. And maybe tomorrow you'll be with me, for the closing session at 3 a.m. local time. Thank you very much. Have a nice day and enjoy this seaweed day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pierre. Bye-bye.